tell the folks first and foremost about Eric Singleton. What stands out about him, and how are the Longhorns standing in this recruitment?
Yeah, so I would compare him to kind of so he's Texas's wide receiver one target, like that. Not for the not for the team next year, but their top target in the portal at wide receiver. He's the guy they want. And I think the first thing that jumps off the page about him is his speed. This is a guy that he runs track. He's from Georgia Tech. He runs track for Georgia Tech as well. He ran a 10.32 in the 100 this past spring. He ran I think it was like a 6.68 or something really fast in the 60-yard. He had a really good time in the 200 meter. Like this kid can fly, and he's been very productive for. Every time Hank is on, Texas gets a commitment. That's true. Let's see. That's funny because I've done the show with Jordan at 11 the last 2 Fridays, and last Friday was Jack Bowmeister, and then the Friday before was Justice Terry. Anyway, but no, Eric Singleton can fly. Certainly a guy, Texas likes speed on the perimeter. That's exactly what he is. So maybe kind of like your Isaiah Bond of last year, a little bit smaller, obviously, but a guy that can just take the top off the defense and is a threat anytime he has the ball in his hands. Against Georgia, he had like 8 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown in that 8 overtime game a few weeks ago. So yeah, big time playmaker. He's their guy. He's the guy that he was on campus yesterday. Believe he left earlier this morning. And there's been some predictions I've seen on the networks, for Auburn. I think he has a relationship with that staff. I think Texas is right there for him. So we'll see what happens with him. There's NIL stuff saying, he's $1 to $2 million asking price, or, that's what it's going to take to get him. I haven't heard that, but, I think that's probably standard, I guess, for his skill set. So we'll see what happens with Eric Singleton, big time player. I think Texas will wait to get an answer from him before they do anything else at the wide receiver position. So I keep kind of saying similar to last year, like around this time last year, it was all about Matthew Golden, like that was their focus in the portal, get Matthew Golden. I know Juice Wells was available at this time last year, and Evan Stewart, but it was all about, they wanted to get Matthew Golden, and then they got him, moved on after that, and were able to go out and get Isaiah Bond and Silas Bolden in January. So I think they'll try to get him, and if they don't, then you can look at your other options and see where you want to go from there.
Yeah, and he's got 21 carries for 131 yards, or he did have 21 carries for 131 yards. So, I mean, you talk about a guy who really fits what Sarkeesian likes to do, because Sark likes to use his fastest receivers. We've seen it with Ryan Wingo and Isaiah Bond this year on the reverses, that kind of thing. And he's got some return ability as well. So this guy checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. And I mean, the past 2 seasons, you're at Georgia Tech, so, you're not, and Haynes Keens is a good quarterback, but he's put up pretty solid numbers. He has this season 754 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Last year 714, averages about 14 yards a catch. So, he'd be a big time addition. I think it makes sense, and just what says more about him too is he's the number 1 ranked wide receiver in the portal per 24/7 Sports. Zachariah Branch, who everybody is talking about since yesterday when he entered, he's number 2. So it just shows how highly people think of him and everything he can do. So, and you could have him for, multiple years. Texas, they're I think Chris Jackson, Steve Sarkeesian, I think what they go for, if they're going to go get a wide receiver in the portal, they want to get one and done type talents. They want to get immediate impact elite guys. So that's why I think you didn't see really any push for Micah Hudson, or maybe some of the other guys that have more eligibility remaining. I think they want guys that can come in and, boost draft stock for a year and then go and, help out the younger guys as well, as Ryan Wingo goes into his second year. So, yeah.
Yeah, Hank, speaking of Micah Hudson, as you just mentioned, just doesn't have enough tape out there for
Yeah.
Chris Jackson and Steve Sarkeesian to really believe that he could come in and contribute right off the bat. But why do you think it went wrong in Lubbock? I mean, the dude was such a highly talented player coming out of Lake Belton. We know all the NIL stuff that he got to go to Tech. Now he's going off to College Station. Why did that move happen, and why didn't it work out at Tech?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think his stats were like 154 yards for the entire season. So I didn't watch a ton of Tech this year, and I don't know how many like opportunities he actually got or how many times he was actually put into games. But I think to some extent, maybe he didn't take advantage of opportunities he had, or he wasn't getting the playing time. Jordan Scruggs would be a great one to ask about this because he's all over Micah Hudson's recruiting and all that. So it's a good question. I don't know why it didn't work out. Maybe it was just a fit and just wasn't, as cohesive as he thought going in. And I'm not sure if the NIL worked out either. I'm not sure if Tech was living up to their NIL obligations for him too. Maybe that played into, his role. Really good player. We'll see what he does with A&M. A&M's doing pretty well in the portal at receiver. They got him. They got Mario Craver from Mississippi State, who's a really talented kid. So I'll be curious to see how that works out for him. But yeah, it was just a situation where Texas, like you said, there was not a ton of tape. You know what you had from him in the high school level, but at the same time, like I mentioned, I think they're really going to go after guys that are already established, that they can, like an Isaiah Bond, like a Matthew Golden, that can come in and what you have with them right away.
Yeah, Eric Singleton as a kick returner, 11 kick returns, averaged 21.9 yards per kick return. Hank, what else is cooking, that Texas fans should keep an eye on? I know things are moving 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of the focus, and, obviously the portal's open, but I mean, they're kind of locked in on Clemson right now too. Like, and recruiting has to go hand in hand with game prep and everything, but I'm not sure there's a huge emphasis being like, everyone's like, oh, why isn't Texas getting more guys in the portal? I mean, they've gotten 3, so it's not like they're not doing anything. But again, yeah, they're prepping for a home playoff game in 3 days in DKR. Like that's on the top of their minds. And we're in a situation where, we're a week and a half into the portal. I mean, there's guys that are playing in the playoff that are going to eventually enter the portal. January could be a whole thing. So they're not going to reach for people just because they need they need interior defensive linemen. They probably need more after Shadir Mitchell ended up going in the portal. You're losing your guys to the NFL. You lost some other guys to the portal. You signed 3 really good ones at a high school. You get Cole Brevard from Purdue. Probably need at least 2 more, I would think, just to, have the depth for next season. But, looking at what's available, I haven't heard much contact outside of Lee Hunter, who committed and signed with Texas Tech. I heard that went up to like $1.8 million for Lee Hunter. They were able to get that done. So, I think they want to make sure, they're going after the right guys. Lee Hunter was obviously a guy they really liked, but they're not just going to reach for anybody. And again, people are going to become available after this playoff run. You have the spring window. So I think they're going to get more guys. It's just kind of a matter of being a little patient and letting things play out, getting some more guys on visits. And it's interesting. They actually cannot host visitors for the game this weekend, I'm told. Like they can't host portal guys or 2026, 2027 kids, any CFP host site. So I don't know if it's just for Saturday that they can't do it, or if they can't give them tickets to the game. Maybe they can come if they want. I'm sure there's ways you can work around it. But I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I think, watching the portal in terms of what's happening with recruiting, the class is signed. Those guys are done. I don't anticipate any 2025 kids, that are unsigned, giving Texas a look. Last year we saw DeAndre Robinson get out of his letter of intent after the new year, signed with Florida. You never know. Those kind of things can happen, with coaching changes after the bowl season, if that's something that comes up. I know everyone's still waiting to see, if Ohio State loses to Tennessee, if they retain Ryan Day. I'm just, speculating, but if people start getting out of the letter of intent of a coaching change was made there. So there's all sorts of things that could still happen. So yeah, we're kind of just on the tip of the iceberg with the portal.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sark said it's the adjustment to practice with Bledsoe and now Sadir Mitchell entering the portal and not, Tia Savea and Justice Finkley are staying with the team even though they're in the portal. And that helps. But it's become difficult for Texas to practice with their shortage of defensive tackles suddenly. So interesting dilemma.
Yeah. I saw this question down here. Someone's knocking on my door. Always during YouTube. I think someone's asked about Ryan Williams, the receiver from Alabama. I do. Let's see. Do you think he stays for his third year for Alabama to make playoffs in 2025? That's a good question. I thought you were asking for this season. I would think so. I think he's pretty solid with Alabama, but that is interesting. If they have another, down year and don't make the playoffs, I'm sure I can't imagine, the back channel offers he's getting now. If he has another pretty strong season as a sophomore at Alabama, that'd probably help. But he actually, this doesn't really mean anything anymore because I've seen it go both ways, but he just got an Alabama tattoo on his arm. So, that holds him to Alabama. But Bear Alexander, the USC defensive line transfer, has a Georgia tattoo on his arm. So it doesn't always mean you'll stick with the school. But I think he's pretty solid with Alabama. I think he's probably paid what he should be paid from their collective or, all the deals he's getting. And then, we just saw Jalen Mbakwe go, who's like best friend, just go back to Alabama and not enter the portal as well. So that probably helps. I would think Bama's going to probably have a pretty good year next year. They've got a good class coming in. So we'll see. Obviously, never say never, but I think he's pretty happy with Alabama and sticking with them.
Yeah. Hank, you're one of the best, man, and your articles on Horns 24/7 are always terrific. One that caught my eye, though, was your Cam Rising possibly going back to Texas, or just kind of a food for thought type of thing. But talk about that a little bit. If get it. If you've seen Horns 24/7, go check out this article for Hank. But talk about that a little bit and why that kind of makes sense for the 2025 season.
I still, whether it's Cam Rising or someone else, I think Cam Rising makes sense because obviously you have to have buy-in from him as well. Because you look at a few different factors. He doesn't really have an NFL future. I don't think. I don't think any NFL team would really touch him with his injury history, at least not in any sort of like meaningful money way that he couldn't probably make at the college level with one more year of eligibility. So, if he looks into so the expectation is he's not going to be back at Utah. I think Matt Zenas reported that. He hasn't entered the portal. He hasn't declared for the draft. So he's kind of in limbo. We don't know what he's doing. But if he does enter the portal, if you look at it, next year, Trey Owens is not a guy that, has any anticipation of playing next year unless he's needed, obviously. So, if you have a 1 year gap where, Arch is the starter, and I think people got upset with me about that story because they thought I was suggesting that he should come in and be the starter. That's not what I was suggesting. I was suggesting Cam Rising be an insurance policy for this title window that Texas currently has, especially with Arch Manning starting next year. So, you look at the past few seasons, Texas hasn't gotten through the full season with their healthy starting quarterback one time. There's been multiple needs of, your backup quarterback having to come in, whether it's Arch this year, Malik Murphy last year, Hudson Card the year before. So, I think it's important. And, if Texas can get a guy, if Cam Rising wants to get into coaching or something like that, a situation where, he comes in, agrees to be the backup, they give him a nice NIL deal, and he's there if needed to play a game or two, what you have in him for the most part. I think it makes sense. And if it's not Cam Rising, I think having a fourth scholarship quarterback on the roster would be wise, especially a guy if you can get him to buy in as a backup. And that's not a knock on Trey Owens. I think he's going to be really good. I think he is really good. But, if it's available, why not, give yourself insurance there? So I don't know. I was just kind of thinking out loud. Obviously, Cam Rising has a history at Texas. It's different staff, but he knows about the program. So yeah, I'd be curious to see if that's a path they go down. I would imagine he probably wants to go start somewhere for his final year of eligibility. Hasn't been really able to play the last few years. So we'll see if anything comes of it. But I thought it was an interesting thought.
Well, Hank, what are your thoughts on the Texas Clemson game? What do you think, are the things to watch out for in this game, and how do you think it goes?
Yeah. Biggest question, can Texas score over 20 points despite, racking up a ton of yardage on offense? Can they break that 20-point threshold? Clemson, it's interesting. They actually don't have a great red zone secondary defense. They give up, I don't know where they rank, but it's not great. And so maybe could this be the opportunity that, Quinn Ewers needs to break through and throw some touchdowns once they're in the red zone, or, move the ball in the red zone. So that's interesting. They obviously, Clemson is very good at forcing turnovers. They've always been known for a stout defensive line. They got guys like Peter Woods, TJ Parker. That'll be a good NFL resume tape for Kelvin Banks, TJ Parker on that matchup off the edge right there. Texas should be able to handle business. I was thinking about my score prediction today. I think I'm probably going to go 28-17. It's the thing that gives me pause though is like, and if you're watching this game at home, it's like Cade Klubnik comes back to Austin. That storyline where is he going to like just go off and have the game of his life, and they're going to say, oh well, why isn't he at Texas? Why is he the quarterback for Clemson and not Texas? And I just that's the 2010 through 2013 Texas student in me, like hearing those storylines. No, I think Texas can handle business. If having Kelvin Banks back will help. I think Trevor Gooseby did a good job in his place. I think Clemson's going to have a really hard time moving the ball in this defense. They're banged up at running back, and they have talent. They have great skill talent. I just think Texas. I think they're going to have trouble moving the ball in Texas consistently, at least. Maybe some big chunk plays, but can they put together consistent drives and get touchdowns? Again, like Clemson kind of lucked their way into this playoff. I know they won the ACC championship, but if it wasn't for Syracuse beating Miami, they're playing in I don't know what bowl right now. So, Texas should be able to handle business. Can they get the run game going like they had it going against Kentucky, against Texas A&M? I have no concern about the defense. I think the defense can handle business. It comes down to don't turn the ball over and, taking advantage of, finishing drives, not getting down in the red zone and stalling out, missing a field goal, get the ball in the end zone. So it should be good. I think 28-17 is the score I'm going to go with.
Zay, you got one more?
Yeah, Hank, out of all the guys that have transferred to Texas right now, Brad Spence, Jack Bomeister, is it Cole Brevard or Bredford?
Brevard,
yeah, Cole Brevard. What do you like about all three of those guys, and how do you think they're going to help the 2025 team?
Yeah, honestly, all of them are need positions. I think Brad Spence might be the most exciting pickup. I mean, he's just, he was recruited as an edge in high school. He can still play edge. He can rush the passer. He's athletic. He's rangy. Can play middle linebacker. But I mean, a guy that Texas seems to like to recruit the guys that play well against them. And he had a really good game against Texas in Fayetteville a few weeks back. So I think he could be a really nice addition. Obviously, you have Anthony Hill, you have Leon Leifau, but having a guy like him is going to help with the depth. And behind the two starters, it's very thin. So you got young guys. You got Ty Anthony Smith coming up. You signed two guys out of high school. I wouldn't be shocked to see them try to go get another linebacker, just to add more to that room. Brevard, obviously, Texas likes these 300-pound plus guys. He's that. Lots of experience. Started every game for Purdue this past season. Originally was with Penn State. So, a guy with high-level football experience. And then Bomeister, I mean, that might be that's going to be an important pickup. I mean, Texas's special teams have not, played up to the standard that they've set for themselves in the past few years. Kern is obviously young, but, he hasn't, wowed so far. But what I talked to Jack Bomeister on the phone after he committed, and I thought it was cool. He he really likes embracing the role of he's going to help Michael Kern. Like everyone thinks Michael Kern's just going to transfer out and go somewhere else. Maybe he does, but I think Jack Bouwmeester, would be really a good mentor for him, and obviously has played really well. Aussie punters, you can't go wrong with them really. So I think he's going to be a nice addition as well. And then Texas just had that Ian Ratliff just entered the portal, so they're down like, it's going to be interesting, navigating this playoff run with guys that have entered the portal or I don't know if he's going to stay with the team through the playoff, but from a depth purpose. So I think 3 really nice additions. We saw Lee Hunter was supposed to visit today and tomorrow. He committed to Texas Tech. That would have been another quality addition, but I think they're at a good pace right now. I think other positions you look at, linebacker, defensive line are obviously important. I think they could look for a cornerback, depending on how things shake out. Wide receiver, obviously. I'm curious to see how running back shakes out because obviously if they all come back healthy next year, you're pretty stacked. You have a lot of guys, but do we see someone go in the portal? I think running back could be an interesting area, and we've seen guys like Justice Haynes enter the portal from Alabama or Braylon Russell from Arkansas. I was told Texas isn't pursuing Justice Haynes, and then Braylon Russell told me he hasn't heard from Texas. So, doesn't look like they're making any sort of push there now, but that could be interesting. And then obviously tight end. We saw Max Clare visit as well from Purdue. That seems to be a spot that they might try to that they're going to try to address. You got young guys like Jordan Washington, Spencer Shannon, Nick Townsend. I think could probably play next year, but obviously you probably want a more veteran presence to just with Gunnar Helm going and into the draft. So I think there's a lot to come from the portal here in this window and even going into the spring.